Well, I'm young enough that, I've kind of grown up in a world of fast fashion. And, some of the major brands and outlets have been a part of the way I buy clothing since I was a little kid. And I had never really stopped to think about where the clothes came from or where they went after they were with me or at all who was making them and how those people's lives were affected. And I'll never forget picking up the New York Times the day after the factory collapse in Rana Plaza and seeing this image of this huge wall of missing person signs and these two boys walking by it, and reading this article about how, in our modern world, these people were making clothing for major Western brands that I knew and frequented all the time. And, that was being crushed and burned alive, and that it wasn't the only incident, and that it was one of many, and that there was this whole story. So I think when I got into the subject, I didn't come from the background of fashion or design or any of those things. I just came into it and said, this is insane. Like, this is a crazy part of our world, and it's horrifying that I have never heard of it. Like, how did I live this long in my life without even considering something as basic as where my clothes came from? And for me, as I began to ask some of those very basic questions, like who made this and where did they make it and what's their life like, and is it better or is it worse because of it? And it just began to open all these doors that led to making the film, because I think what I found is that, while I hadn't asked some of those questions, that there's really a lot of us that haven't asked some of those questions. And so the film is not a guilt trip, and it's not one of those like downer, things that we've all seen before. It's really just an invitation to say, hey, there's something really important in the world that you've not considered. And you are a part of something integral just by buying clothes. And as simple as just opening our eyes and our hearts to this idea that there's hands, physical human hands that touch the things that we wear, and those hands are lives and they matter. I think that's what's really exciting. That's my hope for the film, is that we get to just kind of broaden this conversation, and we get to take what's been a very focused part of the industry or what's been a very academic field of study and say, hey, broadly in the real world, let's take seriously this idea that when we buy something, it is a moral act and there are a chain reaction of consequences. So let's begin to be more mindful and choose things that actually support life and not take it away.